The night shift at St. Mary's Hospital was quiet. Fluorescent lights hummed. Nurses sipped coffee. Monitors beeped in steady rhythm. And then, the glass doors at the entrance slid open with a soft whoosh, and in walked a German shepherd. No collar, no leash. His fur wet from the rain, his chest heaving as if he'd been running for miles. Before anyone could react, he bolted, past the reception desk, past startled nurses, ignoring shouts to stop. Security followed, but the dog didn't slow. His paws echoed down the hallway until he stopped at room 214. Inside, an 8-year-old boy lay still, a maze of wires and monitors keeping him alive. The dog stepped in quietly and placed his head gently on the boy's arm. Seconds later, every monitor in the room began to change. What happened next would leave doctors, parents, and every witness in that hospital utterly speechless. Ethan's room had been the same for weeks. Pale blue walls, a single teddy bear by the pillow, and the constant, unchanging rhythm of the heart monitor. Just 8 years old, Ethan had been the kind of boy who could never sit still. He had a smile that seemed to pull you in, and an endless curiosity about the world. His favorite books were about animals, his bedroom wall covered in hand-drawn pictures of dogs. 3 weeks earlier, everything had changed. It had been a sunny Saturday, the kind where Ethan would be outside from breakfast until dinner. But a sudden accident on the neighborhood street had left him fighting for his life. The impact had caused severe head trauma, and doctors weren't sure if, or when, he'd wake up. His parents, Sarah and Michael, rarely left his side. They spoke to him every day, read him his favorite stories, and held his hand as if their touch alone could pull him back. Meanwhile, somewhere miles away, a German shepherd named Max roamed the outskirts of town. Max wasn't just another stray. He had a regal posture, intelligent eyes, and a way of moving that made people notice. But no one could get close to him. He kept his distance, watching, always watching, especially near the old park on Maple Street. Neighbors had seen him for months, wandering alone, sometimes sleeping under the same oak tree. On cold nights, he would disappear, only to be spotted again in the same spots the next morning. Max had a past, though no one in the neighborhood knew the details. Years earlier, he had belonged to someone, loved deeply, trained well, until life pulled him away from the only family he had known. And while no one knew it yet, Max's story and Ethan's story were already intertwined. It wasn't just chance that brought him into that hospital. It wasn't hunger. It wasn't shelter from the rain. Something deep inside him had been pulling him there for days. That night, as the rain poured and the streets emptied, Max waited outside the hospital's sliding doors. His fur clung to his body, his breath visible in the cold air. And then, as if hearing a silent call, he moved. Through the entrance, down the hall, past the voices telling him to stop, until he reached room 214, where the boy he had once known lay silent. The automatic doors had barely closed before the hospital's intercom crackled to life. Security to the main lobby. We have an animal in the building. Footsteps echoed. A nurse's voice called out, "Hey, stop him." But Max was already gone, a blur of wet fur and determination. He moved with purpose, not the skittish darting of a frightened stray, but the unshakable focus of an animal on a mission. Every turn down the sterile corridors seemed deliberate, as if he'd memorized the layout. 2 orderlies gave chase, but Max slipped between carts and gurneys like water through fingers. The scent of antiseptic hung in the air. Machines beeped from behind half-open doors. But Max's eyes never wavered from his invisible target. He reached the pediatric wing. The hall was dim except for the soft glow from the nurse's station. And then, room 214. He stopped abruptly at the doorway, his paws skidding slightly on the polished floor. Inside, Ethan lay perfectly still. His small frame was almost hidden beneath the white blanket. Electrodes dotted his head, wires leading to machines that tracked every fragile heartbeat. Max stepped forward slowly. No growling, no barking, just a quiet whine in the back of his throat, the kind that carried more sadness than sound. Nurse Clara, stationed nearby, froze in disbelief. "How did he get in here?" she whispered, afraid to startle either the boy or the dog. Max moved closer to the bed. The steady beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor filled the room. He sniffed Ethan's hand once, then gently placed his head on the boy's arm. And that's when it happened. The monitor's flat rhythm shifted. Subtle at first, a flicker on the brainwave screen. Then, a twitch in Ethan's fingers. "Doctor, get in here." Clara's voice trembled as she pressed the call button. Within moments, the room was crowded. Ethan's parents rushed in, tears already pooling in Sarah's eyes. She gasped when she saw the dog. "Is that? No, it can't be." Security arrived, ready to remove Max, but something in the room stopped them cold. Ethan's eyelids fluttered, just barely, like the faintest shadow of a blink. His hand shifted under Max's head, fingers curling ever so slightly into the fur. The machines were registering more activity than they had in weeks. Michael, Ethan's father, looked at the monitors, then at the dog. "Let him stay," he said firmly, his voice breaking. "Please, just let him stay." The staff hesitated. Policy was clear about animals in sterile areas. But this moment felt different. Something unspoken passed through the room, a shared awareness that they were witnessing something far beyond coincidence. Max didn't move for the next hour. He stayed perfectly still, the steady rise and fall of his chest matching the beeps on the monitor. Ethan's breathing became deeper, less mechanical. It wasn't a miracle cure, but for the first time in weeks, hope didn't feel like an empty word. What no one in that room yet understood was why this dog, out of all the rooms in the hospital, out of all the people he could have chosen, had come to Ethan. That answer was about to change everything. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the narrow blinds of room 214, painting golden stripes across Ethan's bed. Max was still there, lying on the floor now, but with one paw resting on the mattress as if he were guarding something precious. Sarah had barely slept. She'd sat in the chair beside Ethan, watching both her son and this mysterious dog, unable to shake a strange feeling deep in her chest. A doctor entered quietly for the morning check. "He's showing small but steady improvements," he said softly. "This is the most neurological activity we've seen since the accident." But then the doctor glanced at Max. "That's unusual," he added with a half smile. "I've seen therapy dogs make a difference, but this one seems different." Sarah looked down at Max again. And then it hit her. Her mind snapped back to a summer afternoon 2 years earlier. Ethan had been at the park, chasing a frisbee, when a big German shepherd had bounded up from nowhere. The dog had played with Ethan for nearly an hour, gentle and patient. Ethan had laughed so hard that day, she could still hear it. That dog's name, she remembered now because Ethan had insisted on telling everyone afterward, was Max. "Ethan drew him," Sarah whispered, digging through her purse for her phone. She pulled up a photo from that very summer. There was Ethan, his arms wrapped around a damp, happy German shepherd, both of them smiling in that way only best friends can. She turned the phone toward the nurse. "It's him. This is the same dog." The nurse's eyes widened. "You mean they already knew each other?" "Yes. But how did he find us here?" Sarah's voice cracked under the weight of the question. No one had an answer. Word spread quickly through the hospital. Some said dogs had an uncanny sense for people they loved. Others whispered about impossible stories they'd heard. Animals traveling miles, crossing towns, following scents and instincts no human could understand. But the truth, whatever it was, stood right in front of them. Max had come for Ethan. And that morning, something else happened. When Sarah leaned in to check Ethan's vitals, she noticed his lips moving, faintly, like a whisper slipping through a dream. She bent closer, her heart pounding. "Max," Ethan murmured. His voice was hoarse, weak, but it was his voice. Sarah's tears came instantly. "He said his name. He knows you're here," she choked out, stroking her son's hair. Max lifted his head at the sound, tail thumping softly against the floor. He moved closer, resting his muzzle on Ethan's chest. For the first time since the accident, Sarah felt like she was watching her son come back, not all at once, but piece by piece. Doctors couldn't explain it, but no one wanted to remove Max now. He became a constant presence in the room, lying beside Ethan during naps, pressing close during physical therapy sessions, even resting at the foot of the bed during the night. And as the days passed, Ethan's recovery accelerated. Movements grew stronger, responses faster. His eyes began to open for longer periods. And always, Max was there. It was clear now, the bond between them wasn't just emotional. It was something deeper, something that didn't need science to be real. 3 weeks later, Ethan took his first steps out of room 214. His legs were shaky, his grip tight on the walker, but his eyes, bright, alert, and fixed on the German shepherd padding beside him, told a different story. The hospital staff lined the hallway, clapping softly. A nurse whispered, "I've never seen a turnaround like this." Ethan's parents had already decided Max wasn't leaving. Whatever journey had brought him here, whatever force had led him through rain and streets and locked doors, he had earned his place by Ethan's side for the rest of his life. On discharge day, the doctors officially cleared Ethan to go home. Max walked proudly beside the wheelchair, his head high, his steps perfectly in sync with the boys. As they reached the hospital entrance, Sarah paused and looked down at Max. "I don't know how you found him," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "But you saved my son." Some might say it was coincidence. Others would call it instinct. But for those who were there, for those who saw the boy's fingers curl into that fur, for those who heard him whisper Max after weeks of silence, there was no debate. It was love, pure, unshakable love. Ethan and Max's story became something the hospital would never forget. Nurses retold it in break rooms. Doctors mentioned it in quiet moments to new families. Even the security guards, the same ones who had first chased Max down the hall, smiled whenever they saw him trot back through the automatic doors for a visit. Because he did come back. Often. Not because he had to, but because some bonds can't be broken by time, distance, or even the edge of life itself. And maybe that's the lesson hidden in this story. That love doesn't always follow the rules. That sometimes, the one who saves you doesn't come in the form you expect. And that every once in a while, the most extraordinary rescues happen the other way around. So, the next time you see a dog on the street, pause. Look closer. You might just be looking at someone's miracle, walking on 4 paws. If this story touched you, consider sharing it. Not just because it's heartwarming, but because it reminds us that loyalty, courage, and love aren't just human traits. Some heroes wear uniforms, some wear capes, and some have fur and a wagging tail.